He wants to assert more of his authority over D.C., and we are here to say he can't have it. Say it with me. He can't have it. He can't have it. Trump can't have it. Trump can't have it.
Residents of the nation's capital are pushing back against Donald Trump's attempted power grab. The president announcing today the federal government is taking over the D.C. police force and sending in National Guard troops. At least 800 soldiers have been activated, and he's threatening to send in the military if needed. Trump invoking a law that allows the president to take control of local police in an emergency. He claims this is in response to rampant crime, but, the facts in D.C., of course, don't match this narrative. Overall, violent crime is down in Washington and has fallen faster than crime in the rest of the country. This is just the latest example of government overreach from Trump, who deployed military troops to Los Angeles earlier this year. Critics say it's an escalation of an alarming authoritarian push.
The president announced that he has called in the National Guard, hundreds of those troops that will come to D.C. It's a bit unclear what their role will be.
The president didn't even mobilize the National Guard on January 6th.
If you look at the 25 most dangerous cities in the United States, D.C. doesn't appear on that list.
What he announced today is a federal takeover of D.C. police.
He's actually trying to give his base red meat to get them off of the Epstein story.
He even talked about New York, Chicago, trying this out in D.C., and then he might go to other large cities.
Joining me now is Dr. Niambi Carter, political science professor at the University of Maryland College Park and author of American While Black, African Americans, Immigration, and the Limits of Citizenship. And Molly Jong-Fast is still with me. Dr. Carter, we'll start with you. Grand scheme of things, we know Trump is an authoritarian. We know he has attempted this before in Los Angeles. Why do you think he is after Washington, D.C.? He doesn't care about whatever the local issues happen to be. He doesn't care about concerns in Navy Yard or anything else like that in the area. Why do you think he's making this move right now in D.C.?
Well, thank you for having me, Jason. I think part of it is the fact that this is a majority black city, a majority minority city still, with a black woman mayor, and we know Donald Trump does not like women very much. But I also think it's a place where he actually can flex his muscle. Unfortunately, D.C. is not a state. So it's one of the few places where he actually can just send in National Guard troops and do all of these things with little to no repercussion. And we know Congress isn't going to stop him. So there really is sort of no downside, if you will, for him to do this, especially among his base.
Molly, I want to play you some sound from Mayor Muriel Bowser at a presser today talking about this takeover attempt and get your thoughts on the other side.
We know that access to our democracy is tenuous. That is why you have heard me and many Washingtonians before me advocate for full statehood for the District of Columbia. While this action today is unsettling and unprecedented, I can't say that given some of the rhetoric of the past that we're totally surprised.
Now, Molly, as Dr. Carter mentioned, there's no state to sort of protect Washington, D.C. It's a lot easier for President Trump to do this sort of thing. But, he's all but said he's going to try to do this in multiple blue cities, right? You never hear him talking about Houston. You never hear him talking about Atlanta. You never hear him talking about any of the states that he actually won in the last presidential election. My question for you is, what are the options, sort of legally, if anything, that these cities can do when these kind of takeovers happen? Can they simply push back and say, hey, look, legally, you can't do this, or you can't take these people over, you have to get this sort of judge's ruling? Or are most cities basically incapable of fighting back against these kinds of takeovers?
Well, we've seen this, right? We saw this in Los Angeles. We saw, there was some amount of pushback. In the end, they left. I mean, I think the larger question is more like, this is meant to scare people, right? This is an intimidation tactic. It's meant for people to be afraid. It's meant for him to show his base that he has so much power. And so much of what Trump's done since he's been in office this time is these shows of force, these things to sort of get his base excited or to get the rest of us worried. And I think that's what this is. And that's why it's from an authoritarian playbook. It's this kind of really intimidation tactic, which is, it's not necessary. It's really about pageantry. And that's why he wants things like military parades. And that's why he wants, it's all part of the same playbook.
Dr. Carter, to that point, when Trump sent in federal troops and everything else like that, sending the Marines to try and take over Los Angeles is a huge city. People were still having brunch and didn't know what was happening in downtown. Washington, D.C. is a lot more compact. I'm getting texts and Instagram pictures and everything else like that from people today talking about teenagers being, yanked off the streets for playing their music too loud, or people being arrested and handled roughly for just smoking marijuana, which they're allowed to do in certain parts of the city. What do you think could be the long-term impact on this? Because to me, I think if you do this in Washington, D.C., there's a lot of powerful people in that city who aren't going to like this, and the pushback might be louder and closer than attempting to do this across the country when he did in Los Angeles.
Well, certainly. I mean, look, I think this is Donald Trump's sort of opening salvo to see how far he can push this. I mean, the thing about D.C. is for a long time, young people in this city, who are not very many, they're about 6 to 10%-ish of the population, are more represented in the justice system than anybody else, right, in this city. And the only thing we can believe from that is kids are more likely to commit crimes, which isn't true. But they are people more likely to be caught and be surveilled and be singled out. And I think people need to be very careful here. One of the things that DC does not have is a prison system. So you start getting these younger people in the criminal justice system sooner, you're going to more likely see these people be charged as adults, which he said he wanted juveniles to be charged as adults. And they're going to be sent further away from the district. And we know this is going to have all kinds of effects, like congressional representation for the states that take these young people. But more importantly, I think we have to remember, DC has been a political football for a really long time, right? Mm-hmm. Going back to like Vincent Gray's days in the 90s, right, when there was a DC control board. I mean, I think this is an attempt to do something more severe than that and put DC into almost a kind of receivership and really maintain control, not just of the laws of the city and the people of the city, but also the coffers of the city, which are quite full right now. And I think that's something we cannot forget, that DC commands billions of dollars for a city its size. And so that has to be attractive on some dimension to this federal government.
Molly, to follow up on that, the Financial Times has this write-up on the Trump administration is shaking down NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA and AMD are paying 15% on a China chip sale revenues directly to the U.S. government. Look, at this point, if we look 6-7 months in the Trump administration, Banana Republic is no longer just a store in the 90s, right? It is clearly how this country is being run. And from what Dr. Carter says, this presidency might be looking to take money from the city of Washington, D.C. They're clearly just getting direct bribes from other countries. When we look at the impact this is going to have on lower parties and lower parts of states, how can we stop this sort of growing corruption? Because if you have the top of the chain, if you have the top of the administration basically saying, I'm going to hit up companies for money, I'm going to hit up cities for money, how can we stop then mayors from doing that? How can we stop governors from doing that if the president has said it's open season on corruption?
Well, I want to say two things. One, NVIDIA, that's a tax, right? He's getting taxed. Right. He's taxing corporations. Now, it's ironic to me because Republicans told me that they weren't for taxes of corporations. But, all of this, I mean, even the tariffs, right? That's just a flat tax on everything you buy, right? Unless it's eaten by the company. The other thing I just want to say, one last thing about DC statehood is, like, if it were not for Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, DC would be a state. Okay, so if you want, there were Democrats who decided that DC should not have statehood, and they are no longer in Congress anymore, and they believed that they knew better. And I just want to say, like, we saw this coming, right? And this could have been avoided, and it should have been avoided, and this completely lays at the feet of both Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin.
It's an excellent point. Dr. Niambi Carter, Molly Jong-Fast, thank you so much for joining us this evening.